In a 10 spring lock. A lot of people still think that Afton died while being spring locked in FNAF 3. And honestly, when the game came out, this was actually seemingly correct. I mean, we never really saw Afton go limp like he truly died, but for all intents and purposes, Afton was dead in FNAF 3. But then, as more games came out and more was added to the story and to the lore, Afton was shown to never have died in the game, since, you know, he was, as we now know, being kept alive by the one you should not have killed, who was possessing him as an individual and was keeping him alive so that he could continue to suffer for all of his crimes. So honestly, before William even started his whole always coming back thing, he came back from the dead, at least technically speaking, which I still think is damn impressive, okay? I haven't died before, even technically, unless we count like on the inside or my dreams, but hey, we don't need to talk about that at the start of a video, right? In a 9 explosion. Okay, so, well, physically speaking, William dies in The Man in Room 1280, the third story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. Quite extravagantly, might I add, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But like, how would that have been possible? How could William just have exploded like that? It's not something that you really think about, and I think I have an explanation, but it's certainly a bit more interesting than spontaneous combustion. William knew about possession and how it works, okay? He knew about agony and how his daughter got scooped and his son was crunched. So, what if he tried to ensure his own survival by intentionally causing himself extreme agony, injecting or installing some form of explosive that, when triggered or when in the vicinity of a Fazbear warehouse or trigger device, would cause him to explode violently from the inside out, creating what is possibly one of the most agonizing ways to die, even in the FNAF series. I mean, this guy was absolutely mental, okay? Even potentially injecting himself with molten soul metal remnant in an effort to keep himself alive. So for me, it isn't out of the question that William inserted an explosive device into himself. But considering all that comes after this, glitch trap and whatnot, and the fact that Burn Trap still has William's body inside, I don't think that this one is really canon, and I don't think that this actually caused William to die. And if you're enjoying this video, guys, hit like, okay? It really helps us out, especially with the algorithm almighty. Praise be its name. So yeah, did you do it? Why the heck not? Okay, do it now, babe, please. In at 8, second spring lock. I say second, even though technically Afton's second trapping was in the books, but also some may not consider that possible in the main series, but you know what? In the context of the number, it makes sense. So, could William have suffered a spring lock failure before getting trapped in the spring Bonnie suit like we see in FNAF 3? It's possible. Explains why I say again as well, because, well, it would have been first, but it's again on this list. Since William is described to have scars that are consistent with a spring lock failure in the novels before becoming Springtrap. So, could it have happened in the games? Maybe. We don't really see William in a visual sense in the games, aside from him being purple. So, I don't know. Maybe William was the reason the spring lock suits were retired in the first place, since we hear of an unfortunate incident at the sister location. So, is that unfortunate incident William? There are plenty of people that it could be, none of which are named, but William having to deal with his own injury would certainly get them put out of commission for a time, but with William then continuing to use the suit to kill people and then putting it on again like we see in the FNAF 3 cutscene suggests that this scenario is unlikely, but you know what, it's still possible, so it's still a possible death. In at 7, accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe when that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he set about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. In at 6, demon deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's definitely unlikely, probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. Halfway through into number 5, meta theory. Now, honestly, this isn't possible, not even in the slightest, unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, some way, William ended up seeing the FNAF Rule 34 art that's online, specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit, so in theory, Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art, and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. In it for sacrifice. Maybe this isn't about fan art or a demon deal at all. Maybe Afton is just a religious man who worships the old gods, more specifically, the dark ones, and believes, like some ancient cultures, that sacrifice is the key to a peaceful and long life. I mean, in the end, if this is the case, he wasn't wrong. His misdeeds end up getting him possessed, which allows him to live for much longer than he should have without food or water, after being spring locked for 30 years, and through multiple fires. I mean, if this is his motivation, this would absolutely make sense to him and actually to him be proven true. Like maybe he doesn't know that his body is being possessed, at least until Ultimate Custom Night when the vengeful spirit reveals himself. Maybe until that point he genuinely thought that he was being kept alive by the gods. Hell, maybe even after the one you should not have killed reveals himself, he's still thinking that it's one of the gods instead of one of his victims. Crazy people believe crazy things, right? So who knows? Maybe Afton just thinks he's doing the Dark Lord's bidding in exchange for eternal life. Or maybe an end to his suffering after losing his wife or something like that, okay? There are many explanations, although I doubt that this one is very likely. I still like talking about it. It's fun to explore. Getting close to the end in number 3, FNAF 6. Could William have been dead before FNAF 6 takes place? I think it's a possibility, technically, because like, what happened to Springtrap between games to cause such horrific warps to his body? Like, sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, but we also see him alive and not all that damaged in Sister Location's Night 7 ending cutscene. So, where did all of this additional damage and warping come from? The head becomes larger somehow, and so do the feet. I don't know, okay? This genuinely doesn't make any sense. We know that they're the same person, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night's voice lines, but I'm so confused as to what could have happened to cause this. I'm sure the extra damage comes from possibly fending off wild animals, since, you know, he's still a body, a rotting corpse that would attract scavengers. So how did the head of the suit get bigger? It's not like it evolved, it's not like it leveled up like freaking Magikarp from punching all these wolves. My only guess is that like, William either broke into a Fazbear warehouse and tried to like reassemble himself, or I don't know, maybe the gases from an actual decaying corpse, if he was dead prior to this, caused the head to expand, but even that wouldn't make sense. I don't know, we see so much damage. Maybe being a corpse just caused the suit to mess up because Scott was like, that's what I want. But ultimately, into number 2, the Blob. The true ending of FNAF Security Breach is seemingly one of the most interesting parts of the game because it contains a whole load of little things to watch out for. It also actually ends the game, which at this point I think is probably the best thing. After making our way into Burntrap's area, Freddy is going to be taken over by Afton's newest form, and then it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using 3 monitors with corresponding buttons that activate fire and seemingly trigger his weakness, which is a whole other story. Players, you'll need to avoid the animatronics that come out after you, but you can use doors to lock them out. You can use Freddy to scare him off. There's a lot that you can do. And then when Burntrap is finally burned even more, I guess at this point he's just trapped, because like in math it cancels out, right? The blob, which was like a tentacle monster thing that was attacking us, then attacks Burntrap, William, and then tries to make sure he doesn't get free, okay? Then we run away, but my question is, does the blob actually kill William? I don't know. Like, there are death animations in the game files, apparently, allegedly, I haven't seen them, but they weren't used, so we can't really consider that canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing is definitely annoying, and I thought it would have ended before this game, but clearly not, so I don't know anymore. Just God, for fuck's sakes, please let William be dead. And finally, in at number 1, Never Died. Currently, what we know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it, hence why there are so many damn fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and Security Breach all end with something or someone getting burned. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities to rest, and then in FNAF 9 we burned Burntrap multiple times to try to get him to stop possessing Freddy. And then it's all because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these things to rest was through fire. But how is that really like, is that really the thing? Because, like, all 3 fires haven't really done anything. They haven't done shit. We've been told that fire is the only thing hot enough to burn off the Remnant, but it's also been described as Remnant liquid metal. So if the soul-infused metal can become a liquid, then how is it possible to just burn off the soul part? That's not how metallurgy works. I think it's metallurgy, I don't know. That's not how things work, okay? That's not how the universe works. Dr. Talbot is lying. He's William, alright? There's a whole video on it. Go check it out, alright? William is lying. He made up the fire thing so he couldn't be killed. In at 10, Clara Afton. Okay, let's talk about the big one first, even if I don't like it. Clara is a character from The Immortal and the Restless, a TV show from the FNAF universe featured after every night in sister location. The soap opera features 2 characters named Vlad and Clara, and their son. Vlad is a vampire and wears a purple suit, linking him to William, and Clara is just a normal girl who had his baby. Vlad keeps claiming that the baby isn't his, even though it can literally turn into a bat. Clara, the baby isn't mine. Thanks to the comparison between Vlad and William, everyone thought that Scott was confirming the name of William's wife, or the mother of his children, as Clara. This doesn't really make sense to me, because like, why would William stand in and be called Vlad, but the mother have the same name as her TV character? But also, it doesn't seem like it's meant to be the mother. Sure, it makes sense, but Clara in the show then goes on to burn down Vlad's house. To me, this is meant to represent William and Henry, the creators of Fazbear Entertainment, the founders of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Vlad is William, who is denying his responsibilities with the company represented by his vampire son. And Clara is meant to be Henry, trying to get him to put in some work instead of being so secretive and then burning down his house, which would represent Fazbear Fright, since Henry had burnt down multiple establishments in an attempt to kill William. At least, that's what it seemed to me. And at 9, A Terrible Fate. This was brought up by MatPat in a video a long time ago. Basically how every Afton will receive a terrible fate, some even worse than death, and you know what? It's pretty true. Let's start with the mother of his children. She's gone. We don't know if she died or if she just abandoned the family, or maybe she figured out what William was capable of doing before he even did it, but she isn't around and is most likely dead. Then Emily, the daughter of William, taken by Baby and ended up possessing the body of the animatronic until it burns away in FNAF 6. Then Crying Child, who gets chomped by Fredbear in 1983 and is told that he will be put back together, but from what we know so far, he isn't. Next we have Michael, who ends up getting his insides removed by a scooping machine and then having Ennard use him as a meat suit. Let it be known that this is also including his baby sister, because she was still possessing Baby, meaning that his sister is wearing him like a 3-piece suit on the way to a courtroom. And finally, William, the one who lasted the longest. Not typically something men do. He, despite all of his efforts, bites the dust between FNAF 6 and Help Wanted, presumably just after Ultimate Custom Night. But then he possesses a hard drive and then gets scanned into the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. Damn, this theory turned out to be true, and that's pretty freaking nuts. And today, Baby Mama. Another theory about the identity of the mysterious Mrs. Afton is that there really isn't a Mrs. Afton. Only a baby mama for the kids that abandoned them and left them with their father because she never really wanted children, or were worried that they would turn out like their father. Or she could have been in their life for a while but then had an accident, or maybe had to move out for work and William couldn't leave because of his business. There are more ways to have a family than just married parents. So the idea that the kids didn't have or didn't know their mother is entirely plausible. It could be that William had donated some of his progeny to earn some money to help buy the character of Freddy Fazbear, and those kids were what came of that donation. But then he ended up getting them somehow. I don't know, semantics. There is no guarantee, and honestly that's what I like about this series. Sure, it would have been in the 80s when they would have had their kids, and slightly before, but that doesn't mean that they can't reject social norms. And at 7, FNAF 3. Okay, look, the last few numbers may seem to make this not make sense, but listen, okay? Afton, in a sense, does die in FNAF 3, since this was meant to be the final game in the series until the fans were disappointed with the main jump scare, okay? So, prior to Scott releasing FNAF 4, William Afton was canonically dead, and the series was over. But after that, things were more complicated than they ever had been before. And many people do consider Afton dead after getting spring-locked, like I said, which isn't true, since he was being kept alive by the one he should not have killed, aka Crying Child. Oh yeah, you're gonna get mad at me, but it's true. But technically speaking, until the continuation of the story between the time of FNAF 3's release and the day before FNAF 4's release, William was dead. Oh, wait a second. He shows up in the final newspaper in the background, doesn't he? I don't know. Maybe he was never supposed to be dead, but the series was supposed to be. So as far as I'm concerned, if the series dies, so does the character. And it would have stayed that way too if it weren't for you meddling kids and your damn animatronics. Afton would have been dead in the spring Bonnie suit eventually, okay? Never being possessed by his son because he wasn't added. He would have eventually ended up shutting down just due to the wear of the animatronic, since Henry wouldn't have kept setting fires that would remove all the rust and whatnot. At least I think that's how it would work. And eventually he'd have been forgotten when Poppy Playtime came out, so yeah, this counts for me. And at 6, Glitch Trap. Currently, post-True Security Breach ending, there seem to be 2 instances of Afton roaming the halls of the Pizzaplex. Or I guess, one roaming and one trapped in a giant ghost of animatronics past blob. So, this really begs a philosophical question: is Glitch Trap truly an instance of William Afton? Because if it is, then everything we should know about the series and how possession works in the FNAF universe is wrong. Currently, from what we've established in this universe, there are 2 main ways to actually maintain life after what should have been death in this FNAF world, universe, whatever. Or at least in the games, there's 2, okay? The books also have human robots, but that hasn't been proven canonical yet. The games have Remnant and Possession, which are connected but aren't the same thing. Remnant is seemingly a byproduct of Possession, being a combination of metal and soul, showcased in the books as the 5 endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics possessed by the original missing children's incident victims, and then Possession comes before that. But Afton wasn't possessing anything, he was being possessed. And Glitch Trap is an intentional feature within FNAF VR, along with also being a virus, or I guess the virus took the form of the main antagonist that was meant to be in the VR game. But it also takes control over Vanessa. The only explanation here is that either Vanessa is a robot, but then again, if she is, then why is she looking at herself in the rooftop ending if she doesn't have a soul because she is a robot? So maybe this needs its own video, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, let me know. Halfway through, into number 5, Henry. In the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is also the year that Afton's life starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not even a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put William down, okay? I'd be doing it with myself, with my bare hands. Especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old, okay? Afton got lucky that Henry didn't have more initiative in my mind, okay? I have no idea why he didn't, because I'd rather go to jail for killing the man that killed my daughter than chase him for 50 years trying to burn him to the ground. But like, come on, okay? Who would really blame him too? Afton got so lucky that Henry is just a little who wants to use fire to stop him, okay? I wouldn't care about going to prison. if Afton had killed my kid. No chance in hell, especially when she was that young. I would have choked him out with my bare hands and wrenched his neck. Also, hello to the jury. In at 4, zombie. There's also the possibility that Afton has been a zombie this entire time, and honestly, that makes me extremely angry. I'm masking it though. Because out of all the things that the FNAF series has done, this would be the cheapest and the worst. Forget Dream Theory, forget this all being a storybook, forget everything else. This would be the dumbest thing that FNAF could do, since it would basically come out of nowhere, okay? People already think that Michael is a zombie after getting innards shoved into him, but zombies aren't purple, guys, okay? And then making that into yet another, like, father-like son parallel would be so stupid and such a horrible retcon that it would be worse than it all being a dream, especially after establishing that Afton was being possessed prior to the spring locking, which would most likely have ended up with his death, and if he was made into a zombie, that would probably be his death point, okay? It would just change too much about the series for things to make sense, and would probably result in a whole lot of rage from the community, or at least I hope everyone would find this stupid enough to get mad at, because I would, and I want to be validated. And number 3, Crying Foxy Bro. I have a whole video on this theory if you'd like to check it out. It's up in the top right corner, because this is kind of complicated. At the end of FNAF 4, Crying Child dies, and when this happens, we will see William tell him that he will put him back together. Nothing really comes of this line though, at least from what we're told. But if you look at it, Crying Child could have been brought back as the character we know as Michael, or Foxy Road to some. Michael seems to always be around Crying Child, and it's the only time that we see him in memories around Crying Child. In the original FNAF novel series, the main character known as Charlie is revealed to be one in a series of robots that were made after she was killed early on in her life. That same idea could be what William did to Crying Child, but instead of making memories about Crying Child, he gave him new ones that made him believe that he was responsible for his little brother's death, and that would make him stay away from the Fazbear restaurants forever. Of course, until his father makes him go to Sister Location, which isn't really even a Fazbear location, to meet his sister, who knows that he is a robot, hence why she says he won't die, even when getting scooped, a machine that has only been known to scoop robotic parts out of animatronic shells. We don't see any blood on the scooper when it attacks us, our vision only goes red. I really think that this could be where Scott is going. Matt had originally thought so as well, saying that Crying Child could have been brought back as a robot. And if you want a further explanation, the link is in the iCard. In at 2, Reunited. I was gonna sing, but that would get us demonetized. The Afton family has been separated for a while, thanks to, you know, death and taxes. But what if the goal of security reaches to bring them all back together? At least, maybe symbolically. This is a wild one, but it's still fun to consider. William is back in the form of Vanny, since he has taken over Vanessa, and will later on most likely get his body back, or at least a body of his own. Next, we have Vanessa herself, who could be some form of relative of the Afton family, or maybe even the mother. It would be insane, I know, but remember, William was working on a solution to aging, or the key to immortality, so it's plausible. If not, she could also be the adult robot version of Elizabeth, the daughter taken by Baby. In the books, Baby is able to transform between looking extremely realistically human and looking like a circus clown thanks to the pins we see on her in Sister Location as well, so it's not as far-fetched as you might assume. Gregory, the child we play as, could very well be the Crying Child as a robot, or at least a representation of the Crying Child. And Glamrock Freddy is obviously the big brother Michael, protecting Gregory by letting him hide inside his chest. Wait, if we keep going with that, could Gregory hiding inside of Glamrock Freddy be Scott showing us that Crying Child was inside Michael, basically confirming my theory? I may have to make another part to that theory with all the new evidence, and like a conspiracy board like what I did for the top 10 reasons Clara is Clara Afton in the background. Did you notice that? Yeah. Finally, in number 1, robots. Every single one of the Afton family members was made into some form of robot, whether it be them possessing a robot or having one made in their image. Let's start with Elizabeth, who becomes a robot when she possesses Circus Baby after being scooped. And then we have Michael, who even if he wasn't a robot version of the Crying Child, is scooped and gets his insides replaced with robot parts. Ballora is made in the image of William Afton's baby mama or wife, letting her become in essence a robot even if not through possession. William becomes spring trapped after getting spring locked, which, wow, while not killing him does make him part robot, and now in Security Breach he'll have to be a full robot in order to return to the land of the living. And then finally we have the crying child. If we go with the idea that I'm wrong about him being put back together, he's a tricky one to place as a robot. He gets killed as a person and then fights for his life in a coma in the hospital, right? That's who we play as in FNAF 4. That's why we see flowers, meds, and an IV in the corner next to our bed. But it's in those small details where we can find out why Crying Child became a robot. Life support. While in a coma, you're not really able to do anything. You're unconscious, unable to eat or drink, hence the IV. It's also not uncommon for coma patients to be on life support since they can't really do anything for themselves. Crying Child would most likely have to be on life support, especially because of his younger age. And at 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and Crying Child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Faz Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So, from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's Faz Facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and Crying Child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So, while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the sister location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. Like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later almost. And it ain't Phone Guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the Phone Guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the vengeful spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have 2 different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret 3rd version, aside from the one we play as at least. And 7, adoption. Even more so, the kids just may not be his at all. If the child from The Immortal and the Restless is supposed to be a representation of his kids, the kids we all think are his because they turn into a bat or live with him and are disciplined by him could just be adopted, as he keeps saying, the baby isn't mine. William could have simply adopted those children. It would be difficult as a single father to do so, but he owns a successful company, so he could easily provide. He also could have a son already, hence why Michael makes fun of and is mean to the Crying Child. We don't know if Emily or Crying Child was born first. They could be twins and are the same age, and William or the adoption agency didn't want to split them up. You know, I mean, it's probably the adoption agency. And at 6, kidnapping. Or I mean, if we're being totally honest, William could have just kidnapped them in order to experiment on them, or make them easier to kill. But then he grew attached to them enough that he told them to stay away from the animatronics, which they obviously didn't end up listening to. The whole idea of possession, however, I don't think came across William's mind until he saw that Elizabeth had possessed Baby. Up until that point, he was probably just killing for the hell of it. Or maybe he started to get Henry to be in so much pain that he had to step away from the company. People have killed for less, so William killing to get control of a business, to push it in a specific direction, or to sell it off so circus babies could work out, that's entirely plausible. He could have kidnapped them because he wanted to seem more innocent, or maybe just so he had an alibi for when he was out slaughtering kids for sport. And for resurrection. The Afton family is a complicated bunch. They've all suffered terrible fates, and now they've all in some way been resurrected. Let's go over the evidence. William Afton gets spring-locked and is presumed dead, but he isn't. He survived and is now spring-trapped. That's a form of resurrection. 2. He does finally die in FNAF Ultimate Custom Night, but then is scanned into Help Wanted, thus bringing him back again. And in Security Breach, that arm at the end of the gameplay trailer is very clearly meant to be his, suggesting that he will be fully resurrected in that game. If not, he was still resurrected by taking over Vanessa's mind and making another damn furry suit to kill him. That's another form of resurrection. The others are more simple than that. Mrs. Afton is presumably brought back in the form of an animatronic called Ballora, having the animatronic be made in her image and not possessed. There is no evidence of that. William brought her back as a robot without actually making her possessed. He just created her using her idea. Michael was killed by the Scooper, but brought back as Ennard and then himself again after Ennard ejects himself out of the skin suit. It's weird. Emily possesses Baby after getting killed by her, and the crying child could have been brought back by getting close to the end. And in number 3, Dream Theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, crying child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if crying child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like dream theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If dream theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not dream theory. But ultimately, in a number 2, time loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% guaranteed not to be the case, but ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually started living his life on repeat, the same thing over and over? That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time-traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel, or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in a number 1, psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. According to police reports that saw the substance in the FNAF books, it's It's appeared to be a bubbling liquid mercury. The appearance of this glowing silvery liquid is similar to Remnant depicted in the novel trilogy, particularly in the Fourth Closet, which makes sense given that Remnant, as we know, is a combination of human soul and metal, which is created when a soul possesses a metal-based object like an animatronic endoskeleton. In the Fazbear Frights books, where most of this lore comes from, its powers are expanded upon. Remnant can be used to make already living beings even more powerful through the power of positive memories, kind of like how everyone gets defeated by the power of love in The Flash. The primary scientist studying Remnant is Dr. Talbert, a friend of Phineas Taggart who studied its negative counterpart, Agony, which now means that the Agony that possesses animatronics and the human soul are two different things, but seemingly both of which had to come from someone who died. Talbert studied Remnant because his daughter Renelle was sick when she was younger and he wanted to hold on to the good memories of her in case he lost her. Remnant could also be isolated and put into a certain object, so Talbert created a pendant made from Remnant metal as a gift for Renelle. Keep in mind that this Remnant is also just a form of metal. It's kind of like a metal compound, like Damascus steel, but instead of a lot of layers of steel, it's metal and souls melted down, and then that is liquid Remnant, but then as a solid, I guess you could say it's a Remnant nugget. It's unclear how Dr. Talbert got his hands on such a large amount of Remnant, but he had a steady supply that somehow was consistently delivered to his house. This also got the attention of an evil entity named Eleanor, who was introduced, or I guess created in the story to be beautiful from 1:35 a.m., the second Fazbear Frights book. Her goal was to obtain Remnant for herself to become even more powerful so that she could spread pain and suffering across the world using the power of positive vibes. However, what we currently know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it. Hence why there have really been so many fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and 9 all end with something or someone getting set on fire. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, and FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities that occurred at Freddy's to rest, and sending William to hell. And then, in FNAF 9, we burn Trap multiple times to get him to stop possessing Freddy, and to again try to kill him. Because Gregory is not above killing. That's a topic for another day. And this is because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these beings to rest was through fire. But is that really how we deal with these animatronics and people? Because like, while 9 out of 10 doctors recommend Crest Pro Health toothpaste, 3 out of 3 FNAF fires haven't worked. We have been told that fire is the only thing that is hot enough to burn off Remnant and to actually destroy it, aside from the fact that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, but it's also been described as a liquid metal. Liquid metal is a hell of a lot hotter than your typical run-of-the-mill gasoline fire, trust me, okay? I have the expertise in this department, so in essence, every single animatronic who is supposed to be set free by a cleansing fire hasn't been so far. The only time we've seen souls actually be put to rest is in FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame, which involved no fire and just putting the souls to rest by giving them what they wanted, a birthday party. But how could that be possible? Like, Dr. Talbert wouldn't lie to us. He's researching so his little girl wouldn't die, right? Well, this is where this theory starts to blow your mind. I don't think that Dr. Talbert, as described in the FNAF Fazbear Frights books, is a real person. Or rather, I don't think that Dr. Talbert is truly his name. Let's think about it. Who else do we know with a daughter in a compromising position who would have an endless flow of Remnant from an undisclosed source and a close personal friend working as his opposite? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, William frickin' Afton. William Afton, my friends, is the true identity of Dr. Talbert. William is no stranger to using aliases either. Remember Dave Miller from the Silver Eyes? Exactly. And this connection only gets stronger the more you look at it. See, Talbert's daughter ends up being impersonated by Eleanor, who in the Fazbear Frights books is, like, described to be Baby. She's described as basically Baby, just with a longer neck. So both daughters in this scenario also end up becoming Baby at some point. Renelle through being impersonated, and Elizabeth when she possessed Baby through, you guessed it, Remnant. And Talbert and Eleanor are attacked by the Stitch Wraith,
What does that relate to? Perhaps the son, who is part animatronic, that's been working to undo his father's plans? Michael? Have we seen the animatronics in the games? No, so how can we take any of what's being said in the Fazbear Frights epilogues as fact? The baby blob turned out to be real, but everything else could simply be a metaphor. And Rennell might not even be meant to represent Elizabeth. It could be meant to represent Crying Child, making Eleanor Elizabeth and the Stitch Wraith Michael, and honestly, that sounds like a much more plausible solution than what's being described in these books, especially with the revelation that Gregory could, again, be a rebuilt Crying Child robot, because all these experiments with Remnant worked. If this was truly describing William and Crying Child and Michael and Elizabeth, this would make perfect sense with the story. This is like a recap of what's been going on with FNAF. FNAF 4, Crying Child dies. So William promises that he will put him back together by finding Remnant after he kills the 5 missing children and then disassembling them in FNAF 3's minigames when he releases the spirits and then gets trapped in the Springlock suit. But then we also learn in the original novel trilogy that the Remnant from the original 5 animatronics was injected into the Funtime animatronics. So while the Funtime animatronics have the souls of the 5 missing children all combined into one, they also are serving as an experiment for how he can use it to bring back his son. And he even injects Eleanor, who was impersonating Rennell, with the Remnant, just as he recreates Crying Child into Gregory. So here's how I see it. William as Talbot through, I'm guessing, just journals that Henry just somehow stumbled onto were made to spread the rumor of Remnant needing to burn, to be destroyed, so that if Henry ever tried to stop William, he wouldn't be able to. That's why William knows he'll always come back. He's rigged the game, and in doing so, ensured the survival of himself, his daughter, and his 2 sons. Rennell is a representation of Crying Child, having been bitten at his birthday party in 1983 that William is trying to save. Eleanor is the power-hungry daughter Elizabeth that only wants the Remnant for herself, even willing to abandon her father to die to live another day, as we see with the Afton amalgamation, or even kill her father, as we potentially see at the end of the true FNAF Security Breach ending. And the Stitch Wraith is Michael, at first misunderstood, killing his creator like Michael tried in the FNAF 3 and 6 Fire, but in reality trying to right the wrongs of his father before him and bring peace to his family. And as we see in Security Breach, they accomplished their goals. Gregory, representing Crying Child, is back. He and Freddy, representing Michael, stopped William, and Vanny, Elizabeth, gets to fight another day.